Hello and good evening and welcome to another episode of Axiom Flux. Tonight it's season 5, episode 12 today, which is the 10th of March 2019. We've got a special guest with us tonight on the show, and her name's Tracy Blackwell. I've only seen Tracy on some of her Yellow Vest videos, and I've been given this to read out. So it says here, tonight's episode welcomes Tracy Blackwell. Tracy's son Josh was murdered on the 26th of January 2018, along with two of Josh's close friends, Harry and George, while on their way to a friend's 16th birthday party. On Saturday, the 26th of January 2018, Josh, Harry and George were making their way to their friend's birthday party at Goals, Shepiston Lane, Hayes. At 8:40 p.m, they were struck down by a Black Audi driven by Jaynesh Chudasma. Sorry, what was that, Tracy? What's his name?
Chudasma.
Right. Josh was hit with such force he was thrown over an 8-foot fence. Henry was carried on the bonnet until the car crashed into the cemetery wall. A girl held George's hand as he laid half in the road and half on the pavement. The driver and the passenger then ran and fled from the scene. If this has been an accident, they would have stopped to check on the victims, but they didn't. They ran like cowards. Two of the other boys that had been hit then managed to catch up with the driver at the Esso garage. They then hit him over the head with a bottle to make sure he couldn't escape. When the paramedics arrived, they proceeded to treat the driver first, instead of the children, to the disgust of everyone. The passenger managed to escape and to this day is still under investigation. Over a year later, Tracy, along with many others, continued to fight for justice. And that's the title of tonight's show, folks. It's Fight for Justice. On the panel, we've got the usual guys. We've got PJ with us. Evening, PJ.
Evening, Jeff. Evening, Tracy.
And all right, and we've got Jouster. Evening, Jouster.
Evening, Jeff. Hello, Tracy. Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. At the moment, it's just me, Predator Jeff. We've got PJ, Jouster, and of course our star guest, Tracy. Hi, Tracy. How you doing?
It's always difficult for me to answer, to be honest with you, Jeff, at this moment in time. Can I just do a correction? It's Harry, not Henry.
I did say Harry, didn't I? Did I say Henry?
I thought you said Henry.
Oh,
sorry, I may have misheard.
I do apologise.
It did come through as Henry when I heard it, but that may have been, the sound audio there.
I do apologise. Henry. I've got the crappy reading glasses on at the moment, so they're not very good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, my eyesight's deteriorating badly with age, but there you go. I'm sorry to hear your. It's not an easy question to answer for you, Tracy, given what you've been through. So, do you want to give us a bit of history, sort of, about what's been going on since this event transpired, and let the viewers know, your thoughts.
Just before we do, though, Jeff. Just before we do, Tracy, I'd like to know a little bit about Josh, because I've listened to a lot of these podcasts and videos that you've done and you've been on, but I'd like to start off with just getting to know a little bit about Josh, who we were, as an individual, if you may, Tracy, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, I do my best. Probably one of the reasons I don't, you're correct in what you're saying. I mainly just stick to the facts and what's going on and don't really discuss my son in depth because it's very painful. So that's probably why I've never really done that. So I'll do my best. If I need to stop on that bit, then I will.
Yeah,
Um,
I totally understand that, Tracy, and
yeah,
that was no way to put any pressure on you. By all means, if there's anything that you don't wish to discuss tonight, then you're more than free to do that.
of course. Thank you. Anyway, but I do appreciate you asking about him. You know, my son, obviously he was 16 at the time and just such a wonderful child, to bring up. You know, I was very lucky to be his mother. He had morals, respect, looked after people. He was a protector of people and children, you know, without going into stories, what he did growing up to show that. You know, just a handsome, loving young lad, never rude or cheeky. You know, he was at that age where kids can be cheeky at that age to their parents. It's natural, going through puberty and everything else. But he never was. Just so respectful, you know, in the home, and all he ever liked doing with his friends. And his friends were very much the same, you know, was having a laugh. That was their thing, just having a joke and having a laugh all the time. He worked and he was only 16. He left school in September 2017 and he went to college and he was training to be a plumber. And what happened when it became half term, when the college was off, he was offered a job doing some labouring in that 2 week period. So he went and done, you know, he'd go out at 6:30 in the morning, go and do labouring, which was landscaping. So it was a physical job. And he did that. I was so proud of him getting up so early in the morning, going out there, even in the freezing cold, and never complaining about doing it. You know, he saw himself earning his own money then, doing that. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, the gentleman asked if he was happy, if he wanted a job full time. So we had that discussion, you know, because he was going to college. And I said, well, look, if you want to try it, speak to the college and see if they would take you back if this didn't work out. So he ended up doing the job. And then he decided, well, you know, he wanted to go back to college, but that he only decided actually on that Friday night of this happening. When he came home from work, he discussed that with me, that he actually wanted to go back to college. He was very much into his football. So from a very young age, he played football for the primary school. He then played football for the secondary school. He played football for Harefield United. Same as, you know, George and Harry did as well. And Harry was a semi-pro. So he was all very much into their football and played at goals and things like that. Growing up as a young child, he was quite shy, you know, quite a shy boy, unless he was with his friends. And then he was the opposite of being shy. You know, just a wonderful child to bring into this world, and it's devastating. You know, I can't believe that has happened to my son. Even now, over a year later, I can't believe that he isn't here. So, yeah. I'll stop on that bit if that's okay.
That's
okay,
fine, Tracy.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I know it particularly traumatic talking about these sort of events, even after all this time.
Yeah.
So you've been getting involved in this fight for justice, and how has that been going? What exactly have you been up to in your fight for justice? I know I've seen you on some videos with the yellow vest and all that sort of stuff. I know a lot of the yellow vest movement is about Brexit and you know, making sure that we get the Brexit that the people voted for, the 17.4 million people, which government seems intent on messing up and backtracking on it. So what's been your story since this event happened, Tracy?
Not to go on your question, I'll just quickly revert back to last year. I set up the Fighting for Justice page purely with regards to Josh, Harry and George. And we did our own demonstrations, you know, outside Scotland Yard, opposite Whitehall. We even done a 4-night sleep out outside Whitehall. And then I was lucky enough, you know, the DFLA asked me to speak on their stages, you know, to speak about my son, George and Harry, and what had happened. So I've been out there.
Tracy, for our viewers, what's the DFLA?
Right, that's the Democratic Football Lads Alliance.
Ah, right, okay. Sorry about that. It's just I'm a bit ignorant on a few of these different facts. Thanks for that. So the Democratic Football Lads Alliance, yeah.
You know, and they're just fantastic people, you know, that the mainstream media has demonised along with us. You know, we've been in the mainstream lately because of what we've been doing. I'll come back to that in a minute. So we've been on all these demonstrations. Now, I've never been on a demonstration prior to this. I used to see, you know, what the mainstream media would report these demonstrations as being. And it's not until you're out there and see really what is going on that you can see these demonstrations were the complete opposite as what the mainstream media were portraying them as. And then I went up to Sunderland and I stood with the women and children up there and I spoke at their event. I was lucky enough to be asked there. So I've spoke at many demonstrations since all of this. Now, being out on the streets with our own story, we actually thought when this happened to us, George's dad said, you know, we're in the third biggest cover-up in this country. So you had Hillsborough, you had Stephen Lawrence, and now we thought at the time it was just then our 3 boys. Until you go out on the streets and do your demonstrations and you speak to other people and people send you their stories because you're speaking out and they want to share their personal tragic story with you. And you find out there's hundreds of us. And then you find out all the other things that are going on in the country that you didn't know because the mainstream media keep all of these stories away from the British public. And you learn that the mainstream media are actually your enemy. And that's horrific to know. The stories are horrific, you know, that we know out there and what's going on and that there's no help and the police are not what they are. So on doing all these demonstrations, I remember I spoke to so many people and I would ask them how long they've been demonstrating for. And there was one gentleman I met once who had been demonstrating since the late 80s. And then another one who done a starvation demonstration. And I said to him, and he'd been doing it for 6 years on and off. And I said to him, so in those 6 years, what did you change? You know, doing these hunger strikes. And he actually changed nothing. And the gentleman who had been doing it since the late 80s, I said, what changed or changes has happened with these demonstrations since you've been doing nothing? And then I found out about a demonstration that has been going on in our country for 20 years and no one knew about it. I didn't know about it, and that was to do with the deaths in police custody. Now, there's over 1,098 deaths in police custody, if that's a proper statistic. So with all of this, sorry, go
on. That's incredible. All that in police custody, and there's there's been no charges brought against any of them, or do you know if any of?
Yeah, from my research, Jeff, and from some of I research everything myself, and which is important for people to do, and because that's where you get to really what is going on. I've seen no accountability held on one of them. I read that it was like loss of 5 days' pay, or they had the option to leave the force. But as for prosecution, 5 days' pay.
That's disgusting. That's absolutely appalling. They've basically got carte blanche to do whatever the hell they like with no accountability, no comebacks or anything. It's disgraceful. I mean, Tracy, I've been researching in the what I suppose has been cited as the truth movement for since about 2009. So, you're talking a good 10 years here that I've been awake and knowing what's going on in this country to a large degree. And the the stories I've heard is absolutely incredible. The sort of the establishment and the BBC, which are sort of bosom buddies, and all the paedophilia that everybody's becoming well aware of, and characters like this bloody Jimmy Savile in the BBC, and then you've got these politician monsters like that Leon Britton and Cyril Smith and all these other. I mean, Cyril Smith's deceased now, but they got away with all sorts of horrific crimes over years and years and years. And the person that put us into the European Union as well, you've probably heard all about Edward Heath. Edward Heath was then the Prime Minister. He took us into the EU. He used to have a boat called the Morning Cloud. I think it was a yacht or something, a sailing yacht. And he used to take boys out on this sailing yacht. And, he was a nonce. So he used to, do corrupt things to little boys and things like that. And it's all sort of brushed under the carpet by the mainstream. Mainstream media won't touch on any of this stuff. And if they did, it wasn't until absolutely years later. And like, I'd heard of all this stuff years before any of it come out on mainstream media. So, it shows you how behind they are. Mainstream media are sort of years behind covering any of this sort of stuff. Even the papers are years behind. So, it begs the question, what the hell are they doing? Why aren't they investigating these sort of things until sort of years after? Is it deliberately? Do you feel that it's deliberately, sort of shoved under the rug, so to speak?
Oh, definitely. I think the whole thing is orchestrated. What I know now and what I thought I was living in, I don't live in. And, you're talking about the paedophilia, obviously we all know about Savile, and everything's been after they've died. Stop telling us after they've died, because there are, I think, is it 116 members of parliament that are, classed as a paedophile? I don't know the proper statistic, but, I haven't, to be fair, researched that bit properly yet. I was only told that, so I don't have the evidence yet. But I know there's many, so stop telling us after they've died. Because that's completely wrong. And it's just trying to fool the public that, look, here we are, this has happened, we're trying to do something about it. We can't do anything about it because they've died. And it's not on, but I think it's all orchestrated, going back to the mainstream media. Even in my son's case, George and Harriet, they tried to make it look like, you mentioned, when the driver and the passenger run and the two boys ran after the driver and they had to hit him over the head, with this bottle to restrain him, to stop him continue running on. Well, the way the mainstream media printed that, they made it look like there was a fight before what happened. So that's how they printed it originally.
They sort of took it all sort of out of context then and got it all back to front sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And even...
Do you think they... Sorry, Trace. Do you think they've done that deliberately, or do you think it was sort of accidentally taken out of context, or do you just think it's just bad reporting or something, or what?
Do you know what, Jeff? I wish I could say that it was just either bad reporting or they just made an error, out of context. But I don't believe they did. In the early days, we was talking to the mainstream media a hell of a lot. We was telling different channels our story. They promised to print it, we'd watch it, or show it on TV, we'd watch it, and they'd cut it down to 10 seconds. Now, we had an interview, and I'll never forgive them for this. They asked us if we would interview them straight after we buried our children, or, straight after the funeral, before we went to the wake. And they liaised with Ian, Harry's dad, and Harry's dad said to me, Tracy, look, they've said their show what we say to them. So I said, okay, as long as they do. It wasn't a time when I actually wanted to speak to the mainstream media for obvious reasons, But I thought, well, if they're going to show the world the truth and what's going on and what we've been saying for the last month, then I'll do it. I'll do it for Josh, Harry and George. So we went in, there was a room they set up at the crematorium for us to speak to them. We was in there for about an hour. Our cars were waiting outside. People were waiting for us the other end. And it was very difficult. They cut that down again to 10 seconds. They didn't show Ian at all. They showed me again. 10 seconds and nothing what we had said. And they promised us. And that was the last time I spoke to the mainstream media about our children's story.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I know all sorts of stuff goes on that we're not, sort of at liberty to know about. It's like, all these files. They had files on all this stuff. They were supposed to be doing an investigation. Of course, it's not. They say, it's an independent body, but it's a body, that's to do with the government. So, they're just investigating themselves effectively, with all the paedophilia stuff and all that. And then they conveniently lose all the bloody files to do with it and things like that. To me, it stinks. It absolutely reeks of, absolute conspiracy. And people say, well, you're just a conspiracy theorist and for all that conspiracy theorist and all this. But no, if people only took the time to research this stuff, it would stand out like a sore thumb. I mean, I've seen a video just recently of Noel Edmonds. He's coming out about, I've got to give that guy respect because he's actually coming out with stuff about Lloyds Bank now. And apparently Lloyds Bank is getting up to all sorts of shenanigans and things like that. So there are people actually trying to sort of to get this stuff out in the open, all these different crimes and injustices and things like that. And there's a hell of a lot of injustice going on in this country now, not to mention the sort of things that are about to befall us with this 5G and depopulation. But that's going down into another topic, so we're going to leave that for another day. But anyway, if Jouster or PJ, do you want to come back and ask Tracy anything? And do you want to add anything? Ask any questions?
Make sure I'm off mute, that's it. Tracy, it's one of the reasons because you mentioned they've tried to portray your son and George and Harry in a different light to, what they actually were, which is why I wanted you to start off with just, explaining a little about who Josh was, partly to do with that. But my question is to you, at what moment did you realise that there was just something not right with the whole, handling with the, the scenario that day? And at what minute did you start to suspect that there was just something not right?
It's a good question, that is. And it was by the end of the first week. By the end of the first week, that's how early on we started to realise. And when we started to speak out. We even put our official complaint in against the Met Police even before sentencing. And sentencing, the murderer's trial, and I will call him that, the murderer's trial was one of the quickest in history. Because there was no investigation. There was no appeal boards at the scene. They kept telling us that they would put appeal board. Now, let's say whenever there is an accident, let's just say that terminology. Whenever there is an accident, you always see an appeal board, a car accident, and, or they do appeals. There was none of that in our children's case. The way they treated the scene, items of our children's were left behind at the scene. There was no clearing up of the scene at all. The children next morning were clearing up the scene before us parents arrived, and I wouldn't like to say live on air what they was clearing up. And, when we got there, one of the mothers, Harry's mum, to be specific, found her son's shoe just sitting there. It wasn't stuff that was hidden that you couldn't find. There was lack of care, just a complete disregard to 3 lives. And by the end of the week, because there was 3 families and we all know each other. So that, I worked with Nicola at the time, Harry's mum, excuse me, George's dad just lived round the corner. So I don't think at the time that they ever was thinking that we would coerce and talk to each other. I don't really know what the Met Police was thinking at the time. And they gave us 1 liaison officer between 3 families. Now, 1 liaison officer, when she is sharing information between 3 families, should not get things wrong. Because once you speak to one family and you're saying this, that should then be said, because it's one person saying it. The same should be said to the other 2 families. If you had 3 different, family liaison officers and we'd had 1 each, and they were sharing information with you, but they were sort of just getting it slightly wrong, in a way you could understand that slightly bit more, that something may be wrong in the relaying of that. But 1 family liaison officer, this family liaison officer never had a phone, apparently. So you're meant to be able to get in touch, not 24/7, obviously, but you're meant to be able to have this number for a family liaison officer. It's in the PACE code book that they have to be there on hand if you need to ask a question. You're going through an awful time. So the things this liaison officer was liaising to the 3 families, we was getting different messages. I wasn't told by the family liaison officer, that should have been told, that my son went over the high railings and into the cemetery. I only found that out when I was at the scene by one of the other parents, because the children told her. There was things in the beginning that the police told us that they changed later on to something else as well. A couple of those things I can't actually say right now, because there's certain things we want to say for a private prosecution, and we don't want the police to know everything we know. So there's certain things I can't say. But in the early days, what the police do, they come round, or this one liaison, and they offer you tablets. They're saying, look, is there anything, we can get the doctor to give you, which is saying Valium, basically. And I'm saying, no, I don't want any tablets. I want to, have a clear head, because it's difficult as it is, because you're numb, and everything's a bit cloudy anyway. But I want to be alert to what's going on to the best of my ability, with what I'm experiencing.
Can I ask
2
you
days
something?
after, sorry, go on.
Can I ask you something? So this Jaynesh Chudasma, I don't know if I don't know if I pronounced that right. So he hadn't been charged with anything at all then?
They charged him a few days later with death by dangerous driving, ×3.
Death by
But the
dangerous
3, yeah. But
So what's
the
that?
×3.
Is that like equivalent to sort of manslaughter then, or is that just
No. It's
just driving?
Yeah, no, it's not manslaughter. It's not classed as anything, and it doesn't matter how many people in that one moment. If he'd have ran down, because there was a lot of children walking down that road that night, which is very rare in that area. So there was a lot of children walking down that road that night because of this surprise 16th birthday party. And say he'd have ran down 12 of them and murdered 12, it wouldn't have mattered. They don't do consecutive sentences if they class it as one incident. Doesn't matter how many you murder in that one incident with that vehicle, it's classed as one incident. So 2 of those children, when it comes to sentencing, didn't really matter.
So basically what they've said then is he was neglectful and he was just driving badly and all that, and they didn't establish any form of intent behind his actions, yeah?
Well, that's another side to this story, because the collision report, which I actually have here, the collision report, and it was actually read at a CPS meeting, so it isn't just based on the fact that I actually have it here, it was actually read in front of the police and the CPS. Right. And in this collision report that is done by an expert that I have, clearly states there was 2 manoeuvres that this car did. He overtook further down the road, and quite a way down. It wasn't close by. He overtook further down the road. another car. And that car he overtook was doing 30 miles an hour. And what they told us...
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that because a noise then. Could you say what speed he was travelling at?
Well, what the police said, and there will be contradictory evidence to this, but at the moment I'll tell you what the police said. That the police said that he overtook a car at 71 miles an hour. This particular car that he overtook was only doing 30 miles an hour, between 30 and 35 miles an hour. But apparently...
Right. Yeah, carry on.
Right, so the police said he's overtook this car way further back, and that he's overtook and he's come in between two bollards, which are the second bollard further up is sort of opposite the Esso garage. So they said that he's overtook this car at 71 miles an hour, although this car was only doing between 30 and 35.
Yeah.
And he's overshot. So where he's overtook, he's come up near this second bollard, and they said that his back end swings out, and then it swings back in, and the back rear wheel on the left-hand side rubs along the curb. And then he carries on, and our boys were still further up, yeah? Then he carries on, and then they've said that he clipped the curb. This is their version, that he clipped the curb, mounted the pavement, and killed the boys. And they put that down to death by dangerous driving. They said, and they also said he was 2.5 times over the legal limit. There is that to it that they said as well. And we'll come to that in a little while. So that was their version.
He wasn't actually done for drink drive, though, no?
Well, no.
Drive
no.
Influence.
And we're still trying to determine whether he was insured, and they won't answer that question yet. We actually went to the police station not long ago with regards to that, and the police, we reported it because he wasn't in his car that night. He has his own car. He was in his brother's car that night, not his. And why that was, I don't know. So we're not sure at the moment whether he was insured, because the brother has said to the insurance company that he didn't give him permission, where the police said that the brother did give permission for him to take that car that night. So at the moment, you've got a crime there. You've either got fraud towards the insurance company, or you've got perjury from the police. I'm guessing it's the police, because I went to the police station, me and Nicola did. We reported it. We said we want to know. It don't take 10 minutes to look at a statement. Was that perjury from the police lying, or is the brother committing fraud? Now, we opened that up in November. The police never got in touch with us. We went back into the police station, and they said they closed it down. And they've got no answer for us.
Tracy, it sounds to me like there's a whole list of crimes there, not just death by dangerous driving or whatever. It's driving under the influence as well, speeding.
And
maybe
theft, maybe insurance and all of that. Yeah, maybe all of that.
Incredible, and they just let them off with that. That's amazing. Now, getting back to the name, Jaynesh Chudasma. Chudasma, sorry, Jaynesh Chudasma. Yeah. It sounds like a foreign name to me. Do you know where this person hails from?
Right, that has never been confirmed, but with regards to that, what I will say is I researched the driver, and when the liaison officer, which you do as a parent, it's obvious, you want to find out what's going on here. And when the liaison officer called me up one day, we always had to wait for her to call because we didn't have a number for her, conveniently. When she rang me up, I said to her, I'd actually searched the driver and the passenger. I wanted to see, if they had any accounts and so on, Facebook, Twitter or whatever. So when she rang me up, I informed her that I'd been researching on the driver and that I could not find him anywhere in this country before 2010, and that from 2012 was when his crimes started to be committed in this country. And she was adamant, and I mean adamant, not, I'll check on that, but I'm sure he was born here. She was like, well, I'm telling you now, he was born here, like the passenger was, and he was born in Hillingdon like the passenger was. Now, I thought, okay, maybe I've got it wrong. I can't find him anywhere, but maybe he didn't put his name down for things and things like that. When we went to this CPS meeting, it come out that he wasn't born here, that he did just come here prior to 2010. So that constable, that liaison officer, was sitting in that meeting at the time. And I looked over at her and I said, right, I want to know why you lied. Because you didn't get it wrong, you was adamant. Why did you lie to me when I asked you that question? She wouldn't answer me. She just stared at me and she wouldn't answer why she lied. So you've got things like that, just quickly to say, go on, Jeff.
I was just saying, there's definitely some sort of a cover-up going on then. So he wasn't actually born in this country. So the other thing I was going to say, Tracy, is some people that aren't born in this country, when they commit crimes here, they can claim a thing called political asylum. Diplomatic immunity. They can claim a thing called diplomatic immunity because they're not actually born. If they're of a different nationality, I'm wondering whether it's something to do with that they're trying to protect him or something. I don't know. It just sounds all very strange to me, Tracy.
I didn't know that. Can I come back to that in a sec? Because I just want to quickly, before I forget, add something that I wanted to say before. But if you can explain that to me a bit more in a minute, that would be great, because I don't really understand that, and I didn't know that. But just to state, when I mentioned the collision report that I had in my hand, based on what I told you, how the car was and what it did, based on the police version, this report that I have in my hand was read at a CPS meeting, which stated on both manoeuvres, on the overtake, and then when he mounted the pavement, not flicked it, there's a slope there, yeah? This person knew this road. He lived 5 minutes away from this particular road. Stated that he had control of the car the whole time. And in court, they said the opposite to this collision report. The same as in the CCTV, which we had to endure watching to get the facts out and the evidence. We had no choice but to watch this CCTV of our boys' last moments. Now, I wouldn't wish none of this on anyone, but the police have made us do this because we know they're lying. Now, when we watched the CCTV, you could see it was precision driving and his back end never swung out. It never swung back in. There was no loss of control. Any loss of control or back end swinging out, you'd see on the CCTV shaking of the back lights. You'd see the back car sort of shakes, and none of it. Precision driving. But that's just to leave that there, because I just wanted to mention that earlier. But going on, I know you said the...
I'm trying to remain impartial here for the purpose of this show.
Of course. Of course.
So you said he only lived about this Jaynesh bloke, he only lived about 5 minutes away from where the incident happened, yeah?
Yeah, he did, and the passenger did.
Right. Well, they say that most accidents happen close to home anyway. So, if it was, I'm not going to say.
Can I just slightly interject, Jeff?
I should say incident, not accident, because of course that's the whole thing about it. But yeah, carry on, PJ.
No, I was just going to exactly mention what you've just stated there, where you said incident and not accident, because just before that you said you're trying to remain impartial. Now, that's not impartial because of the words you use, but that's interesting because normally what Tracy will hear is the word accident. Now, that's a key word. It's very important between incident and accident. It's very important you separate them. But for you to say that you was going to remain impartial, but then to go on and use that word, that was kind of interesting for me.
I did correct myself though. In all fairness,
no, you didn't actually, because that is the correct word. But it was interesting that for somebody who was impartial to actually use that word.
Yeah. Well, I did correct myself after. Before you.
I don't think Tracy would see that. I think she'd be much happier you using the original word.
Yeah, I should use the word incident because it was an incident, but
it was, but the media will have you thinking that it was just an accident.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're spot on. You're spot on.
Sorry, Tracy. What was that?
No, that's all right, Jeff. But the other gentleman that just spoke is spot on. Once they start sticking out the word accident, That's what they start convincing the readers, you know, and
Yeah.
you to try. This is just a tragic accident. No, it wasn't. And that gentleman is spot on. You know, you say incident. But I know, you know, I accept that, you know, you wasn't thinking when you said that. I totally accept that. It's fine.
Yeah, no, the point I was going to make at the time, yeah, you're quite right, and I did correct myself straight away. As soon as I realised what I'd said wrong. But yeah, what I was going to say is that most accidents happen close to your home. So this, I mean, from the impartial point of view, if it was to be considered an accident, well, that would be in the right place because he was only 5 minutes from home. But of course, as we suspect, it's probably a hell of a lot more than just an accident. It's an incident. So you know, I was just going to point that out. That's all. What else was I going to say? So this Jaynesh, do you know what actual country he comes from? And if you don't know the country, is he of a particular faith, for example, like is Islamic or something like that, or do you know?
They've never confirmed whatsoever where this person has come from, what his beliefs are, or anything like that. All you keep seeing online is that he's got a Hindu name. So that's their defence. Their defence is he's got a Hindu name, so possibly he cannot be an extremist. Now, to me, anyone can be an extremist. I think our own establishment are terrorists. That's my own personal opinion. And anyone can be an extremist, you know, and especially from research that we have found that out because we've done a lot of research. So I can, going back to that question and answering it truthfully, they have never confirmed with us what this person's views were, what his beliefs were, or where he ever came from. We got no answers to none of that.
Okay, so maybe he's not actually Hindu then. Maybe when you say Hindu name, like maybe what you mean is like he's possibly of Indian descent, but he could be of any faith or religion. So he could be Islamic, he could be Hindu, he could be a Buddhist. Who knows? He could be anything. You know, it would not be right in saying that.
Exactly. That's like saying, you know, I've got an English name.
Okay.
But I can't do anything else. You know, it's a silly argument from what trolls do online. You know, what trolls do since speaking out. I've had videos made up about me saying I'm a Islamophobic, I'm a racist. I don't care what race, religion, what their beliefs were of these two people, and the passenger is a lot more involved in this, as you know, as much as the driver. What their beliefs were. You know, they murdered our children, and the truth needs to be told because it's not an isolated case. On researching, we have found out that cars, vans and buses have been mounting pavements in the UK for over 5 years now. There was one.
It seems like you've definitely remained impartial yourself and taken a sort of an unbiased look at what exactly has gone on, which is a good thing, I think. You know, because in sort of such tragic circumstances, you would think that a lot of people would probably take maybe a biased opinion of blah blah blah, or you know what I'm saying. But in your case, you've kept it quite you've kept yourself quite unbiased and impartial, and you've been sort of respectful about it all, which I should imagine is extremely hard to do. You know, caught up in all the emotions of all this sort of stuff going on, it must have been absolutely terrible for you. But yeah, it's a difficult situation, isn't it, to be put in, you know, with all these sort of finding out all these details. For me, as an outsider, just looking in, to see what's been going on is quite incredible to me that there hasn't been more accountability placed on this young man's shoulders when all the evidence is pointing clearly against him. and that it's to me what it looks. I mean, you know, to me, from as an outsider, what I've heard tonight, it does look like it was definitely intent and malice of forethought that's gone into this. So it's a hell of a lot more than just an accident, like you say. It's like you rightly say. It's to me, it's an intentional incident from what I'm seeing. But you know, if that's been proven, then there should be some more sort of there should be a lot more penalty heaped on this young person's shoulders. This Jaynesh bloke. What the sounds of it, it doesn't sound right to me. Sounds like they're definitely cutting something up.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%, Jeff. There's so much to this, and I'll try and narrow it down because we've had a year of this and it's still ongoing. But I'll give you a few more things. So we was waiting for our children's inquest because we knew once we get the inquest, we can, you can question witnesses, you can question the police. There's a lot you can do in an inquest, what you can't do in the court, because the justice system, I've learned by being put in it, that they don't follow the justice route. It's all about deception. That's what the justice system about. It's about deception. And that's what I've learned through research. When this happens, if you give yourself questions, then you can research the answers and you come to the bigger picture of what's really going on. Like for me, why did they cover this up? Why would they cover this up? So then you've got to look at why and try and find out why they would cover this up. And you see a bigger picture. You see a bigger picture to the establishment's involvement in all of this. And then you go through the justice system and before your eyes, and it's shocking. It's almost beyond belief and sounds unbelievable. When you're in a court, and your own QC that should be standing there for your children, like our QC, that we was told was one of the best in the country, done a fantastic job for the defence, not for our children. And the defence QC stood there lying, under oath. And you're seeing these things before your eyes and you're thinking, this isn't right. And under an hour before sentencing, at the second time we was at the Old Bailey, our own QC again, didn't pass through our victim impact statements at us and had crossed a lot of the words out, had changed the words, and that's against the law. And that's what he did. And he told us that if we was not happy, that we would not be able to read our impact statements. So I went, that's fine.
They actually read out the statements different from what they were written down and signed in court. Yeah?
Sorry?
Is that right? They actually read out the statement that you made and that everybody made in court. They read them out differently from what they were written down, yeah?
Yeah, so what happened, 3 weeks prior, you have to send in your victim impact statement, which is what you want to read at court, in the hope that it'll get listened to. They'll see the devastating effect of what it's done on you and your family. And, hopefully that will give that person more time. Now, we had all been complaining from the off that he's on the wrong charge, from within a weekend. This man is on the wrong charge. It's not death by dangerous driving. It is murder. Now, even in this report that I spoke of earlier, the person states that he doesn't understand why he did what he did. You just can't make this up. You couldn't write it. So we all wrote our impact statements 3 weeks before. And what happens, you have to send them into the police. The police have to okay it. Then they send it on to then what happens, they put it on a witness statement paper. A constable comes round to your house and you have to sign that in front of the constable. So no one can add anything. No one can take anything away from it because it's against the law for someone to do that.
Absolutely.
So then it comes to an hour under sentencing and we're being thrown our paperwork back with things crossed out and word change. I had word changes on mine. Ian had a page and a half, Harry's dad, of his crossed out. So what I did, when I got into the courtroom and I went onto the stand to read this, And I already knew the judge had made the decision anyway that the victim impact statement was irrelevant because we were squashed into a 2-hour slot because she had a murder trial at 12 o'clock. And there was quite a few impact statements to read. So I knew she'd already made the decision before we even got up in that dock.
Well,
You know,
Tracy, see, if you make a statement, one thing I want to pick up on here is if you make a statement, right, and you sign it at the end, that has become your sort of statement of lawful fact, right, in a way. But if somebody alters something and takes out or omits text or whatever, then there should be a signature of the person who made the statement. Sorry, not signature, initialed. There should be initialed every time a sentence or part of a sentence is removed or whatever. Then surely that should be initialed by the person making the statement. So if you've looked through the statement, you want to check and see if it's been initialed with your initials or whoever's initials it was that made the impact statement. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's on witness paper, they're not actually allowed to do that because that's your statement. So someone's not allowed by law to change that. I understand on what you say on a normal thing. It's like if you do a check and you make an error, you cross it out and you initial it. But there was none of that. Yeah, but just still answering that question, there was none of that on this. Now,
Right.
So what I did, when I got on the stand, I looked at the judge and I said, right, Judge Joseph, that QC over there has crossed out my impact statement, the bottom half of it. He has changed words, and I said this because I knew the mainstream media were in there and I was just hoping they would print this. I said, and that's against the law. And she's going, just read it, Miss Blackwell, just read it. I said, well, I want the whole court to know that I am not happy with this. This is against the law. And it was him who done that. Anyway, so what I did, I thought, you know what, you can do me with contempt. I really don't care because this is a cover-up and I'm just not, as a parent, as a mother, having this. So I read what I could still see of my own impact statement. I read that. The only part, and I still read my own words, and they just kept looking at each other, the judge and the QC, and rolling their eyes. You know, they look down on you. I don't know if it's because we're working class. I know that's presumption, but they do look down on you. They treat you like you're silly. And that you don't know what you're on about. And you've got to be in that to see it, to see how you're spoken to. You know, they speak to you like, don't be so ridiculous. Hang on a moment, we're talking about our children here. We've never received compassion, empathy. They failed in their duty of care. They lied. And they still continue to do that. But anyway, so I stood there, I did it, and the only bit I couldn't read was the last paragraph because they'd made the font smaller as well. So it was quite difficult anyway. They'd crossed all the bottom out too much that I couldn't read what I'd actually put there. And they'd done the same with Ian, a page and a half. You know, and that's all against the law. Like I said, it's all about deception.
So not only have they been omitting statements or sections of your impact statement, they've also been perjuring themselves, which is a serious offence. That is a highly serious. In fact, if anybody's done for perjury, they come down on them a hell of a lot harder generally, or they're supposed to. You know, this is how it should be. The justice system should. I mean, you know, this goes back to biblical times. I mean, they said, "Don't bear false witness" is one of the commandments in it. Don't bear false witness.
Yeah.
So perjuring yourself effectively is bearing false witness. So you know that's a serious offence. It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing what they're getting away with. It's phenomenal to me. I'm speechless, to be honest. I don't know what to say next. I shouldn't be laughing because it's disgraceful. It's absolutely appalling that they can, you know, get away with this sort of stuff. They know, as far as I'm concerned, these people need bloody hanging from nooses if that's what they're doing. And these are people in respectful so-called positions of authority. It's an absolute bloody disgrace. There should be an absolute outcry about this sort of stuff going on in our courts and things. But I'll tell you what I've learnt, Tracy, right? from all my research is that people in this country dodgy people have been put into positions of power in all influential positions, if you like, in this country, yeah? And it's almost like sort of infiltration of you, if you like. Our entire systems have been infiltrated. Our institutions have been infiltrated, yeah? And I know that there's a lot of Freemasons within the judiciary and the law system in this country, which is dodgy anyway, because that's a secret association, a secret organisation, yeah. So you've got all these people being put into positions of power, corruptible people, as we know. I mean, from our governments and all the paedophilia and all this, I think they're deliberately put into power so that they can be manipulated by their sort of seniors, people above them, so that they can pull their strings and say, well, you know, I can blackmail you because you're not on the level, you're not kosher, you're not on above board and squeaky clean like you should be. So I can manipulate you to get you to do my bidding and corrupt the whole bloody shebang. That's what it seems like to me, Tracy. If you know where I'm coming from, this is the sort of stuff that's going on in society now, and it's in all institutions. It's not just in the judiciary. You've got the social services stealing children. You've got all sorts of criminality going on. The hospitals are being destroyed from within by an organisation called Common Purpose. They do all this sort of stuff from within to sort of like, I swear they put in administrators into these places, like in hospitals, to literally squander money, squander the funds so that it runs the NHS down and things like that, so that they can privatise it and sell it off to their mates. Pennies on the pound sort of thing. All this sort of stuff is going on throughout society, all these different sort of criminal things, and it's it seems to be everywhere. It's rife throughout all these different institutions. There's just so much of it going on. It's incredible. What are your thoughts on all these other things going on, Tracy, apart from, you know, your incident that happened? What are your thoughts on that? Can you see that sort of corruption going on throughout society?
You're spot on, Jeff. That's exactly what it is. You know, going back to the justice system, every government department is exactly as you said it. It is infiltrated. I've been through so many government departments with regards to our boys' case that's exactly what I've seen going on to the judiciary. You know, they don't work to the justice system. They work to a Freemasons agenda, which is all about deception. So you're criminalised for being the victim, and the criminal is not criminalised. So, for example, you've got, is it regression? Is that the right word? Where they try and get you now, and you know, don't get me wrong, if it works for someone, then you know that's good for that person. It wouldn't work for me, and I'm not sure if I've got the correct word. And what it is, it's where someone does something to you, you know, murders one of your family member, or you're raped or something, and what they want you to do is go into the prison, speak to the person that did that to you, tell them how you feel, when really all you're doing is taking their guilt away, helping their guilt for what they did. Yeah?
Restorative justice, Tracy.
That's it. Sorry. Thank you for giving me the right word. That's it. You know, if it works for someone, that's fantastic. It wouldn't work for me. But it's all about making them feel less guilty to me, because, you know, I've read up on that, and that's what it looks like to me. And in our case, I'll quickly go back to it and come back to your question, Jeff, but it's relevant. He had an appeal. Now, when we had two appeal dates, because on the first appeal, we held that court for 2.5 hours, which I'll explain later on if you wish me to do so. And we held that courtroom for 2.5 hours, you know, us family members and people in the public gallery. We then went to a second appeal date because the judge couldn't decide on that one because we was holding that court. And they reduced it, and they was telling us they reduced it before we even got into court. And one of the things they reduced it for was the impact that this has had on him and his family. Not the impact that it had that we've lost our children, not the impact that it has had on me or Josh's 10-year-old brother who's got autism, who shared the same room for 8 years, that cries all the time and, looks up at heaven and wishes his brother would just be sent back down. None of that.
That's disgusting. Back
this
to
is
front.
Absolutely, which is free medicine.
How long did he initially get sentenced to for driving?
Well, this is another thing, that I get sick of hearing, and I know you will all appreciate this, and anyone listening will. So on paper, it's written that he got 13.5 years. Sorry, correction, that he got 13 years, and he got a 13.5-year driving ban. Now, the driving ban started that day.
Right.
First. Yeah? So how does that make sense? So let's just say that he was going to spend the 13 years inside. And then you've got a 13.5-year driving ban that starts that day, and that he'd done the full 13 years. He'd come out and only really have 6 months driving ban.
Not only that, Tracy, but for the majority of that ban to be of any use to anybody, surely they don't have cause in prison, so...
Exactly. This is why
it's see where it's coming from, Tracy, but also remember that when you get a prison sentence, you get about 50% off for a good remission or something like that.
This is what I'm going to come to. Sorry, Jeff. So on paper, they said 13 years. I forget the ban thing at the moment because that's irrelevant and a load of rubbish. So 13 years he got. The very next day on the court website, because we checked it, it was showing that it'd be out in 6 years. Now, that's without good behaviour off of that. So you're probably talking about 4.5 for murdering 3 children. From that, it's gone to the appeal courts and they reduced it to 10.5. So, what's that? 3 years? 3 years, is it? Something like that he'll end up doing, a year for each child. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they want, because they know we're out here fighting. We've had meetings with Sadiq Khan and the borough commander because they know we're speaking out. So they felt they had to have that meeting. Now, at that meeting, let's go to that meeting with Sadiq Khan and the borough commander, which I think roughly went on for about an hour and a half. At that meeting, we stated every piece of evidence, the witness statements, the paramedics reports, everything we asked for. And the commander wrote these down of everything we wanted. And Sadiq Khan said to the commander, well, make sure they get it in 6 weeks' time. And even if you've got nothing to report in 6 weeks, just phone them and give them an update. So here's us families at last thinking, right, we're going to get the paperwork, we can go through it, we can take this paperwork to the inquest, we can start proving what's gone on here. 6 weeks later, in that 6 weeks, we had no call. 6 weeks later, we still hadn't heard anything. On the 7th week, Ian, Harry's dad, emailed the commander and said, well, where's our paperwork? The commander emailed back, now we've got this in email, and he stated he misunderstood the meeting. This is what they do. See, it's all about deception. So he misunderstood the meeting. He didn't know he was asking for any paperwork, even though he sat there and wrote it down point by point. So they try and keep you in this environment of frustration, upset, and hurt, because it's almost like they feed off of that negativity and they feed off that pain. That's what it feels like, because they keep you in that moment, and this is what they do to many people. And the same with forced adoptions, don't say anything because you won't get, visiting rights to visit your children, we go through tremendous... Yeah, go on.
What you've just hit on there is one thing that really irks me is, like these courts put gagging orders on people and de-notices to shut them up because they don't want the truth coming out. And my attitude, that's one thing that really irks me. that they can limit people's right to freedom of speech to be able to disseminate this information or talk about it with anybody and stuff like that. That really gets my goat, because in this country, as far as I'm concerned, we should have total freedom of speech. That's just silencing people like that is just wrong. It's just totally bang out of order, in my opinion, Tracy. Listen, I'm just going to nip in the other room and get some backing. PJ, if you want to take the chair a minute and carry on with Tracy, because I'm smoking like a bloody chimney tonight. I've got to say it. PJ, are you there? You still there, PJ?
Probably nipped to get a drink.
Right. I'm carry on telling people about what's going on anyway, Tracy. I'm just going to nip in the other room a minute.
That's all right. So going back to where we was going to fight this at the inquest, because I mentioned the inquest earlier. So we was waiting for the inquest. Now, Ian phoned up the coroner's office and was told by the coroner that was doing the Pret-a-Manger inquest at the time that he was going to be writing to us and that we will be having an inquest. And we was like, brilliant, because this is where we can at least start proving what's gone on. About a month went by and we hadn't heard anything. Next minute, gets a phone call from another coroner stating that another coroner has came in, took our children's file from that office and is writing to us to tell us we're not having one. Now, under the Coroner's Inquest 2009 subsection 2, which counteracts subsection 1, we are entitled to an inquest because our children suffered a violent death. And it was violent. You know, viewing your child at 70, after being hit at 71 miles an hour, I wouldn't wish on anyone. Just, but anyway. So, we then got that letter. We looked up on that coroner.
Yeah.
And we found out that coroner that did that had been on suspension for 2 years. And he was due back just before January this year. And we found, written paperwork where MPs had asked for his resignation because he was holding inquests out of hours, secret inquests he was doing, and he was denying a lot of families inquests, like what he did with ours. And he lost files in the Alice Gross case on a train, apparently, because Alice Gross, I'm not sure how I pronounce it, so I apologise if any of her family members or anyone's listening if I've pronounced it wrong. She was that 14-year-old young girl who was murdered in Ealing by that man. I think he came from Lithuania. I could have that wrong. And they found out he had murdered in his own country. And the family wanted to know whether the establishment knew that before he came here. So conveniently, the coroner had the paperwork and apparently lost it on the train. So he got suspended anyway. And then conveniently, he didn't come back just before January this year. He came back in October, went into that office and took our children's file. Now, to me, I believe they just brought him in to do that because the Pret-a-Manger coroner was going to give us an inquest. So then they've brought in this corrupt one to not give us that. On top of that, anybody, and any of you listening, or you yourself, Jeff, can try this. Anyone asking for any information under the Freedom of Information with regards to anything to do with our children, they are sending letters back, and I have a copy of one here stating they've locked it away for 20 years because it's not in the public interest to know.
No way. Seriously?
Yeah. Seriously.
20 years?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've heard them doing stuff like this with like EU treaties and things like that, where they don't show anybody the details of certain foreign and Commonwealth Office reports for like 30 years or 70 years and stuff like this. But fucking hell, pardon my French, yeah, that's quite shocking to me. That is quite shocking to me that they can do that. Basically, so they put things in files and then shove them into a bloody filing cabinet and say, right, that's not coming out for 20 years. That's disgraceful.
Yeah. And it makes you see the bigger picture to our boy's story. you know, from everything I've been telling you. Well, they've shut it down there. They're not going to give anyone anything under the Freedom of Information Act. They've locked it away for 20 years. Why would you do that if you've got nothing to hide? You know, we've written to the Attorney General many times. Now, the Attorney General in the last year has changed, but we've written to both Attorney Generals, the one before and Mr. Cox, who is the one now, and we've written to them and we've asked, just have a meeting with us families so we can show you what we have. And we've never showed anyone we've spoken to everything we've had, because everyone's so corrupt that you don't want to give them everything you have. And trust me, we have been to places where people just want to know everything you have. Yeah? That ain't there for your benefit or for your best interest. They just want to know what you've got. So then they can find something that they can counteract with it later on. So, you know, we've been many places and seen, you know, even solicitors and barristers, they're all corrupt. Anyway, we've written to the Attorney General and said, just have meetings with us so that we can show you what we have. Do you think he'll give us that meeting? No. Why do we pay Attorney General then? Why do we pay for Solicitor Generals? Why do we pay for senior coroners that have no jurisdiction of the coroner below them? Because we wrote to the senior coroner and said, right, this is what this coroner's done. We want an inquest. It goes against your Coroners Act of 2009. And he writes back and says he has no jurisdiction. So why are we paying these people, the taxpayer, paying all these people to do these jobs, and they're not doing them? Like the police, as you know, they're only policy enforcement officers now. They only protect the establishment and not the people. Nothing gets investigated. Crime is high, you know, but the papers are trying to pretend the statistics are lowering, and people believe that.
And the rotten thing about it is, Tracy, is they get bloody rewarded for their incompetence or negligence or whatever, or their deliberate, whether it's deliberate or negligence, they get rewarded for it. It's like the bankers. I mean, when we had that banking scandal in 2008 with corrupt banks and everything going on, they still carried on after the public bailed them out. They carried on giving them even bigger bonuses. You know, so they were rewarding these bankers for their bloody incompetence or chicanery or whatever you want to call it. You know, this is the crazy thing. It's sickening. It is absolutely sickening that these people are allowed to get away with all this. And it's just disgraceful. It's just
what it is, Jeff, it's malfeasance in public office.
Malfeasance, I mean, it's almost like bloody treasonous, isn't it?
Well,
malfeasance, it's...
for some.
There's another word, there's another term for it as well. Malfeasance in public office. And, what's the other? There's another thing as well. I can't remember what it's called now. But, I know what you're saying. It's absolutely appalling, isn't it? These people should be going down for a very long time for their... you know, for this sort of behaviour. I
did have something that I wanted to say to Tracy, but I can see that she's working along, you know, through it. So I don't really want to interject and mention something that you'd slightly be getting onto. But I do have a couple of things to mention to you, Tracy.
Yeah, no, go on, fire ahead, just in case I don't. Go on.
Well, I did first come across this on the news. I do briefly remember that coverage. And then you didn't hear anything after that. Until I saw you outside a police station. Did you have a megaphone?
I've normally got a megaphone everywhere I go.
So you had this megaphone, you were outside this police station, and I didn't know you, I didn't even associate you with them three boys. I was just watching this live feed on Facebook of you outside this police station, and what you were saying, for a good 10 minutes I was listening in, I'm watching, I'm thinking to myself, why is nobody from that police station coming out to even just to offer some sort of comfort or something? I mean, I'm seeing it as you're a mother who's just lost a child, and you're grieving, you've got questions, you're outside a police station, no one's coming out to you. And I'm thinking, have not one of these people got any compassion to come out and just, try and calm you down or just reassure you or anything, you know what I mean? Not one of them. And I couldn't understand that at the time until I watched until I watched another live video where you was explaining having to go and collect certain certain parts of your son. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to get onto this, which is why I was going to wait to ask you this question. But when I watched that video, Tracy, that's when it all clicked in. I'm thinking, not one of these people are going to come out and talk to you. Not one of them, ever.
No.
And you talk about the Attorney General, and I'm not even mentioning Tommy Robinson other than just his name for that reason, because it's the same guy that we're talking about, yeah? Mr. Cox. Even him, he's not going to give you time of day.
No, absolutely. And going on to the two things you said, that was Alberton Police Station. I was out and I made sure I went there. I just got a lift there. I wanted to do it on my own to show that I have no fear. Come and face me. That was the first. They call themselves garages. We used to call them stations, didn't we? But they call themselves garages. Quite a big one as well. And I wanted them to come out and face me, because they know that I know what they did. Well, all three families know what they did. And they know we know.
Tracy, irrespective to that, as I was watching that as a viewer, not really knowing the whole situation, as much as you do today, I'm watching that and I'm thinking, irrespective of that, one of them should have come out. I mean, they've got a member at public who, if you wanted to put it this way, is not well, is mentally suffering, right? They should have approached that person and just at least, tried to do something.
Well, that's why they had liaison officers.
They didn't need to get into a conversation about, what questions you had, and they didn't need to start answering any of your questions. But what they could have done is just, they could have just arrested you. They didn't even do that. They didn't come out. Not one of them had the balls or courage to come out and approach or be confronted with somebody who was clearly distressed on a street outside a police station. They didn't even do you for breach of peace or anything. You had a camera outside a police station. How many videos have you watched where someone's filming a police station and it's terrorist act? They didn't even do that, Tracy. And it wasn't until I watched a recent video where he was explaining that you had to go and collect, parts of your son Josh, and then that's when it all clicked into place. And I didn't need to know anymore. I didn't need to know anymore. I just find these, I can't even call them people, because I struggle to come to terms with that. People could even do this sort of stuff. But yeah. Something has to be done, and speaking about fighting for justice, you are trying to change the law, so to speak, with the death by dangerous driving. Yeah, am I right?
Yeah. Well, what happened with regards to that? We done a petition, and we took that petition on a Wednesday up to Parliament. Now, the reason why we did that is because we knew after our research and what happened with our boys that people, for the last over 5 years now, have been mounting our pavement, using their vehicle. Of course, there are times when it's a tragic accident. Of course there are. Sometimes people walk out in the road without looking, and you also feel horrified and sorry for the driver who's thought that wasn't, if someone's just run out in the road without looking and things like that. But there are hell of amount of times when these cars, vans and buses, and I've seen videos where you can clearly see it's deliberate, have been mounting pavements. And we sat down, me and Nicola, and we said, what about if we do a petition? And that will stop these extremists, these people doing this, and using vehicles. It was one way for us to say, right, let's do this. So we done this petition. We took it to the Parliament on a Wednesday when we knew all the MPs would be there. We went straight into the lobby with this petition, and we handed it to my MP. Now, my MP happens to be Nick Hurd, who is the Minister for Policing, conveniently enough. And Nicola's and Ian's MP, and they only live 10 minutes away, is Boris Johnson. So we have prominent MPs. Now, I took this petition in, handed, and I took a picture of it so I could prove that we took this petition in. From then, because what it is, there has been a bill sitting there since November 2017, waiting to go through Parliament to change death by dangerous driving from 14 years to life. And they still haven't put that through Parliament. So this petition was to get them to make parliamentary time for it and get this bill in. And that would deter whoever's doing this, whatever these extremists are, whatever reason they're doing it, mowing down innocent people. And that still hasn't passed and been put through to parliamentary time. I've sent emails, numerous emails to my MP, when's it going to be put through? We've given you a petition. I still hadn't, up until last week, I finally got a response to that. And all I got is they are waiting for parliamentary time for it. Exactly what they've been saying since, obviously, 2017, even though we handed the petition in, I think it was March 2018. It is still sitting there. And they know this is going on. The establishment know what is happening. The establishment is the snake's head in all of this. You know, 100%. Because if you ask yourself questions of why would you leave over, I think it's 35,000, radical Islamic terrorists. So you've got radical ones. Why would you leave that threat amongst anybody? Why? So you ask yourself that question and then you have to look in why would they do that? You know, and you get a bigger picture to that.
I'll tell you what I think on that, and it's going to sound bad, but I think it's all part of the depopulation agenda. Sounds crazy, but it's weaponized immigration. Is what I'm calling it. Weaponized immigration. They got people from a different culture that have come here, deliberately have been brought here, paid for, funded to come here, to basically destroy our culture, our way of life. That is basically what's going on here. People can look at this and say, they wouldn't do that deliberately, wouldn't they? Think about this, because, you know, this is a funded thing by the United Nations, by the bankers, by the Zionists in Israel and all that. These people are all behind this, forcing mass immigration across Europe from a culture that's not compatible with our culture. So the problem, in my view, is multiculturalism. That is the problem. And to them, it's like a religion. It's like a religion, multiculturalism. But as far as I'm concerned, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do, and you've got one set of laws, and you abide by the laws of that country. That's the way it should be. So what we've got here is multiculturalism. It should be a monoculture. Like if we're the hosts and these people are guests in our country, they should be abiding by the laws of this country. End of. There shouldn't be any appeasing this culture, or trying to change your culture to suit them. That's not what it should be about at all. That's wrong, in my opinion. This is what is going on, in my opinion. It's all deliberate. It's perfect. It's absolutely deliberate. I've seen too much about it. All this is Islamic stuff that's going on, and like Islam is just a symptom of the problem. The cause is the Zionists are the head of the snake. The Zionists and the bankers, they're the head of the snake. They're the people behind it, pushing all this on us. They're forcing this all on us, from what I can see, from what I've looked into anyway, Tracy. I don't know whether you'd agree with that or whether you think there's something else going on. Any thoughts on that, Tracy?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I think, and, you know, like I say, I do all my own research, and I feel there's many fractions being played in this country. You're right on what you said about depopulation, and they are allowing militant age then. It's not refugees where families are coming over, you know, because they have to flee their country because their life's in danger. It's militant age men. that is coming. So you're correct on all of that. But this is what I see and what I've looked into. For over 50 years now, we've had Muslims in this country. And I very rarely use that word because I'm not going to blame a whole community for what two murderous individuals did to our children. Because that's wrong. That's wrong to do that, you know. So I'm not going to.
It's the ideology that's the problem, isn't it? The ideology, not the actual.
This isn't.
Yeah, and what you were saying there, Tracy, about. I don't know what's happened to your audio there. Is it my end or your end? Can anybody hear me? Okay. PJ?
Just about.
I've got you, Jeff. Have we got you back, Tracy? I think it's Tracy's signal there just went on connection. I think we've got her back though.
Yeah, what I was going to say, you're absolutely right about these refugees. It's only 3% of them are actually refugees. The rest are economic migrants that have been allowed into this country. So they'll tell you that it's children as well. They'll tell you it's children fleeing war and persecution and all this. Not children. They're grown men, and it's no women and hardly any women and children with them. It's just virtually all men, fighting age men that have been allowed into this country. It's blatantly obvious to me that what they're doing is just lying to people. But sorry, Tracy. Anyway, getting back to you. Sorry, where were you? And what you were saying? You still there? I think we got technical problems, folks. I think Tracy's having audio problems at the moment. It's definitely.
I was just going to say, Jeff, if Tracy can still hear us, just refresh if you can. Might be the quickest way to solve it.
Yeah. I don't know if she's still. Hang on a sec. Let me look in the.
She's still in the room, but there's nothing coming from the microphone.
I think she's definitely got audio problems. Tracy, if you
she's returned.
Yeah, back now.
We can hear you. We can hear you now. Yeah, we've got you back now, Tracy. What were you saying? Carry on with what you were saying about these refugees and so on.
There was nothing going on or happening with regards to, say, any ideology till 2005. And so there's a question there. Why has it took from that to anything to happen? So you start seeing an orchestrated thing. I believe, from what I've researched, that the government pay the hate preachers to cause hate, to create this radical Islamic cult for exactly what you've just said. And once you start seeing the bigger picture, you start seeing that all this is being orchestrated for exactly what you said. You know, I can't add to what you said because you're right. There's militant age people they're letting in, and what they're doing is anyone speaking out, they just cross you off as either a conspiracy theorist, and we know those two words have been made up to direct people from the truth and from the facts. That's what those two words are, because you can tell a story and then someone says that's a conspiracy and that's it. They've dismissed what you've told them, when in reality it's the truth and it's fact.
Yeah, they use that term to discredit people that are basically analysing. So I like to call them conspiracy analysts. Because they are analysing a potential conspiracy as such. That's what I like to call it anyway. Are you still there, Tracy? Hello?
It's just a coincidence that, the topic we're actually just discussing is what's getting censored through Tracy's connection. You're breaking in and out, Tracy, and then there's only you who's having issues with it,
My internet.
Yeah,
always, when I'm doing live feed, things like that.
it's breaking up. It's been fine all the way throughout. I've got one red bar on the call connection for you. But it's been fine throughout the entire show until we started just discussing what we're talking about now. Which is not surprising that we're having difficulties.
Almost like there's gremlins in the machine
Well,
deliberately trying to.
there's definitely some gremlin in Tracy's machine because nobody else is having any difficulty bar Tracy, and
Yeah, it's to do with the download bandwidth speed, I think.
no, it's been fine. It's been fine, Jeff. We'd all have problems if it were to do with that.
That's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying it's Tracy's internet speed, throughput, download speed, or whatever you want to call it, that or latency or something.
She's getting packet bombed or something. In other words.
Or, when we're on something.
Are you back, Tracy? Have we got you back?
But we're only getting a few words from Tracy on and off.
She's left. She might be rejoining. Let's hang on by until we can get a good connection.
Okay, I think this is a good point for me to go and make a cup of tea.
All right, well, I'll take over, Jeff. Meanwhile, I'll welcome Marty to the show tonight. I do see that you're on there, Marty. Whether you've got a working microphone is another question. Jouster.
Marty in here, is he?
Yep, and Tracy's just rejoined. Hello, Tracy. Have we got you back now?
Yeah, that's better. I just clicked it off and just
came back. Yeah. It sounds good. So while Jeff goes and makes a cup of tea, I'll take over.
It's like, can I add? It's just like, the other thing you're not being told, where you end up looking at a bigger picture, is that with regards to the grooming gangs, where are you hearing that the grooming gangs also groomed for the white rich MP paedophiles and the white rich men? You go and talk to people in Rotherham. I know people in Rotherham, can tell you many a story where you're not hearing the bigger picture, because you have to ask yourself another question, which is, why did the establishment, social services, the police, the councils and everything up in Rotherham ignore all of that for 16 years? There would be a reason they ignored it all, because they was also involved in it. But you're not being told that side of the story.
And there, I just have to take myself on mute. Tracy, I do apologise because sometimes I forget to unmute, so viewers don't hear me, and I just end up talking to myself in the podcast. But I've just corrected it, so hopefully that works. Many shows I've done, many episodes I've been doing this, topics I've covered. It doesn't surprise me, and I wouldn't be the sort of person that would be in any sort of jury trial because they just won't allow me in. That's for sure.
I'm certain they don't want me in any government building myself. Now, just for speaking out as a mother of a murdered child and just want the truth out there, because not only does our children deserve justice and the truth, we deserve that, and so does the British people, because the British people need to know what is going on in their streets in the country they live in. So they have an opportunity to safeguard their children, because we do have a silent war on our streets that they're not telling people of. We do have social services taking people's children, as you know.
Yeah.
I think going back to why we started the Yellow Vest, and why it's gone from, fighting for justice and doing the normal demos to now being out there every single week, sometimes 2 times, sometimes 3 times a week. Because we realise from speaking to everyone that these demonstrations, and one's been going for 20 years, it's not doing anything, yet it's getting worse here. You only have to look at the statistics of crime, people's children, brothers, uncles, sons, daughters being stabbed and shot. Children are being mowed down deliberately, and the mainstream media and the government are hiding it from everyone, and that needs to stop. And, sorry. And, that all needs to stop, and people have the right to know this. I believe we live in dark times. We've got Brexit, going going on. And that's with the yellow vests, we took the initiative from the French. Because the French, as you know, came out on the streets. It's the same thing, standing up to globalism, the political elite, because everything that's going on in their country, because I've spoken to some of the French, it's exactly what's going on in here. It's a worldwide issue. You know, it's in many countries. It's in Australia, as well as being here. You talk to them. When they talk, it's exactly mirroring what's happening here in the UK.
Yeah. But it's not getting
So
reported. It's not getting talked about as it should on any, mainstream channel. You've really got to...
I mean...
Go on, Tracy, sorry.
I'm sorry, no, I thought you'd finish. I apologise. That's why, I don't know if you saw it a couple of weeks ago, the BBC had Newsnight, where they put, the yellow vest, me in it. The mainstream media was the one who used our boy's story, because they know that I'm out there. They know I'm out there fighting for justice. They know what I've said, because I've spoken to them in the early stages of our boys' I wouldn't say investigation, I'd say non-investigation. So they know we're there, yet they used our boy's story to try and say that far-right groups are using the death of our three boys. No, they're not. The mainstream media are using the death of our three boys. There is no far-right groups. I don't even know anyone in the far-right group. But that's what they do, because they don't want people to hear what we've got to say. They don't want people to hear the truth, because they know that if the whole country really truly knew what was going on in it, the whole country would rise up. There would be an uprising. There would be a revolution, without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, you'd like to think that that'd be the case, Tracy, but, how many subjects do we have to cover, and how many times have people got to go out on the street? And, at the start of this broadcast, you did touch on that. You said, for 10, 20, 30 years, people that have gone out and they're still doing the same thing today. And it was only the other day I watched a program on TV to do with the suffragettes, and in that documentary they also stated that protests have gone on for many, many, many decades and still continue to go on for people's, rights and things like that. But as for
that's why we...
Go on, Tracy.
I apologise. I think there's a delay, and that's why
there may be some. Yeah, there may be some latency.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologise. I'm talking over you without realising.
It's all right. I've finished now. I'll let you speak.
So that's why we come out on the streets every week. We talk to the bystanders. We do it outside Whitehall. We're trying to tell them about the mainstream media. We're telling them to go and go on YouTube. Don't listen to what they're saying about the yellow vests, because they're lying about us. We're just ordinary people out on the streets saying, "Come on, enough is enough." And stand up, because we have to. Because I know, being in this system, and I'm sure with what you do and Jeff does and all of you do, which is a fantastic job anyway, what's mainly going on out there on those streets. And it's frightening, the society that's going to be left to the rest of our children and their children. It's frightening, what's going to become of them. And I believe that it's only our generation that can do this. We can't leave it to the generation below, because it's not going to happen, because too many of them have been indoctrinated. That's their aim. Let's indoctrinate them. We're the ones with the fighting spirit, because that's what we was taught. We're that last generation. You've got people now throwing paint over war memorials and calling our veterans, criminals, and because that's what they've been taught, which is part of the indoctrinating. And we're the only ones with that spirit, or so I believe. We're the only ones with the fight in us to stand up like our ancestors did and face the enemy, which is the establishment. You move the snake's head and everything else will fall. We know what our threats are. We know what they are. And we have three threats in this country, but we need to take the snake's head out, which is the establishment. We don't want to be, they don't govern us, they rule us. We don't live in a democracy. Right at the minute, that's just a fault of your mind, because you wouldn't have...
What they say, don't you, Tracy? They say that in the age of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and they will stamp on you for it, for telling the truth. But it's got to be done. It's got to be done. I'm not going to, certainly they're not going to silence me. No way. I mean, I've been coming out with this sort of stuff and telling people about the criminality within the system for the last 10 years. And I haven't stopped. And I'll keep doing so to my dying breath, you know. But it's got to be done. You know, you've got to expose all the criminality and lies and deception that's going on in society for all you're worth, basically. But action, you know, there's got to be direct action as well involved. To get any results, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely, Jeff. What I will say to people, because, you know, it's quite important, that between now and the 29th of March, the establishment will orchestrate things to try and make people kick off. You know, riots, civil wars, because I believe it's not far from that. Because I'm out on those streets, I speak to many people, I can see people are close to the edge, people have had enough. You know, this is all going to be in our time. But if anyone, they're going to orchestrate things to try and make it kick off before the 29th at 11 p.m. Because according to the Lisbon Treaty 222, that if you do that, under the Lisbon Treaty, we will be classed as domestic terrorists, and that will give them action to allow the EU army here. Now, if everyone waits to 11 p.m. on the 29th, and it's unlawful, yeah? So if everyone waits to the 29th at 11 p.m. when treason, where they don't deliver Brexit, is against the people, then anything after that is lawful. Not that I'm telling anyone to do anything after that, I'm just saying it's lawful after that. But anything before will be classed. They want martial law and they want the EU army here, and that's their way to get it. By creating something.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, Tracy, because I was saying a similar thing the other day to somebody. I said to them that after the 29th of March at 11 p.m, if they haven't taken us out of the European Union, then clearly we haven't got representatives in government representing our interests, because they're only representing their own selves. To stay on the EU gravy train.
Yep.
And if that's the case, once that's happened, if they go against the will of the British people, then the gloves need to come off and take our bloody registration plates off and start going against the system. Basically, if they're not going to abide by their own legality, then why the hell should we? That's the way I see it.
Yeah, well, I've always said that. Sorry, Tracy.
Oh, you go. Sorry. Because of that delay, I keep doing it. I do apologise. You go.
No, the viewers are more interested in listening to what you have to say. I was just going to say, actually, I lost my thought there. Yeah, I'll get back to what I was going to say. Go on, Tracy. I'll let you have it.
Yeah, really sorry. Just to reiterate, you know, anything after the 29th at 11 p.m. is lawful. Anything before is unlawful. And believe me, they will be trying all they can to create that civil unrest before the 29th at 11 p.m. And no one's got to fall into that trap. I could say more on what I know, but, you know, I don't want to sit here and end up sounding like a conspiracy theorist to the people who don't understand what those two words actually do really mean. You know, but just mark my words. No civil unrest.
I totally agree.
Not that I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally agree, Tracy. I mean, for a long time, Jeff can vouch for this. I've always said that. I mean, I just don't understand why the establishment just don't come out, be honest, say, yeah, this is how it is, you're right. All conspiracy theories, yeah, you're correct. Because basically, they've got us by the balls. So there's nothing stopping them from just being honest. Because they could still really do what they intend to do, openly. And I think the people have still struggled to coordinate and get together and organise themselves to put something in place. But if Brexit, what I'm trying to say is, if Brexit if it's not implemented on the 29th, I think it's safe to say that we're finally living in a tyrannical dictatorship, and they have just pretty much confessed and come out with, you know, how we're living under a police state and everything. Yeah, to me, as far as I'm concerned.
They don't want democracy for us at all.
There's no democracy. How can anybody believe in a democracy if they do that to us? I just don't get it.
They don't want us living in a democracy. They want normalise, and to them, normalising is to return us to slavery, basically, which has been the way of mankind year dot. We've only had like a couple of 100 years of sort of semi-decent, some form of democracy, allegedly, but some people would argue with that. But the rest of the history of mankind has been fraught with slavery. So they want to return us to that. And I'm sure that most of us, or the decent ones of us, would stand up and say, no, we're not having that. We want more democracy, not bloody less democracy. It's bad enough for thousands of years. We don't want to return to that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to...
The other thing I was going to say, PJ, sorry, mate. I was just going to say, no taxation without representation. Have you heard that saying? Basically, if you're not represented by the people that you've elected to put into government, all right, if they're not representing you, then you don't have to pay any tax. No taxation whatsoever without representation. So withdraw all taxes, don't fund these parasites anymore, and have nothing to do with them. Don't fund the parasites whatsoever. Don't give them any of your money because it's being used against you. Your own money is being used for your own downfall. That's the way I see it. So you've got to take the gloves off, basically. And I started a campaign. I think we should all take our registration plates off. If they don't give us what we voted for, take the bloody registration plates off. Either way, these people in positions of authority need to be strung up. As far as I'm concerned, they should be bloody lynched.
Yeah, and you're right, Jeff, as well, and the other gentleman. We are debt slaves, aren't we, for the bankers? That's bankers' wars. To create debt. So us peasants, underclass, as they like to call us. What a terminology, to call us. We're people, we're humans. We have the right to be treated with respect. We have the right for freedom. And we certainly have the right for justice for our children, all children, and we don't deserve to be treated like this, and we shouldn't deserve to be treated like this. It's all morally wrong. And you're right, we've been enslaved, we actually live in a prison without bars, only we don't see that, how can it,
You see, all this stuff going on is absolutely morally reprehensible. It's absolutely disgusting. It's despicable. And these people, they have to be held to account. And if it takes the people to literally, physically oust them and throw them out and string them up from bloody lampposts or whatever, then that's what it takes. I don't think people realise there's one worse crime than murder in this country, and that is treason, because treason affects everybody, not just a handful of people here and there. It affects absolutely everybody, and that's what's been going on for 45 years since Edward Heath time. It started with treason, and it's going to end with these people being strung up for treason. As far as I'm concerned, it has to be done. It's the only way it's going to end. I mean, they done it in Iceland, didn't they? With the bankers and the government, they basically literally took them out and they threw them in prisons. They just threw them straight into prisons and sorted their mess out and got it back to some sort of reasonable, sane sort of standards. But it took them a bit of effort to do it. But people have got to get off their feet, get off their knees, and stand up against these criminals.
I totally agree with you. And that's why it's so important that we don't get pesco on our streets for a start. That puts German soldiers on our streets, everything our forefathers died and fought for, and we lost thousands of soldiers, to give us freedom, which we actually wasn't really given, but we didn't realise. And I totally agree with you that, you go in and you take over the buildings, you take over all the council offices, and I'm sure if they're treasonous towards us, those 17.4 million people should be out on the streets, because we have more power than the government. There's many more of us than there is of them.
Yeah,
Many more of us.
absolutely.
And we can't take the state of the country to the rest of the children. So, unfortunately, something needs to be done, because the way to do it would be a general strike. Everyone down tools. As you said, you don't pay no tax, you don't do nothing. But people, I've seen it, I've been out there, it's become a walk-on by society. It's not like it was, say, when we was younger, because they stopped the community centres. They've played it so clever, and they've done it over quite a few number of years. They took the community centres away. They've took a lot of the churches away, places where people congregated, where people spoke, made lots of friends, all on purpose. So it's become a walk-on by society. Unless it's to a lot of the people out there, unless it's happened to them, they're not bothered. How many percent of the country is awake? 4%? And only 2% are doing something? We need everyone. We need that 17.4 million. And we also need the people who chose to remain but believe in democracy. We also need them.
I think you'll find that a lot of these people that were Remainers are now looking at the system and seeing it for what it is. And to be honest, a lot of these Remainers or former Remainers are now coming over to the Leave side, Tracy, because they can see the EU for the insidious criminal organisation that it is. It's all starting to become apparent. People seeing the bullying attitudes of the bureaucrats in Brussels and all the rest of it, and they're thinking, well, wait a minute, why the hell did I vote Remain? I should have been on the Leave side all along. And they're starting to come to their senses, I think.
Well, even that, they played clever going on that, because when you go out on the streets, they'll say the opposite to that. They'll say that people who chose to leave will now choose to remain. This is how they try and play it clever. And what they do in the schools, because I know a teacher who works in a school who was a leaver, and he has said that because he was a leaver, he is not allowed to say that in front of the children or talk about that. But the teachers who chose to remain are allowed to. So there you've got is the Remainers convincing the younger ones that no, you've got to stay in it. So you're getting all of this, and then you've got the establishment that have orchestrated and paid these actors, these extras. And believe me, I've been up there, it's like a pantomime. Half of them don't even know why they're standing there outside Parliament, just so the mainstream media can film them every day to make it look like there's an uprising of Remainers that are on the streets and everyone wants to stay, and leavers didn't know why they wanted to leave, which isn't the case at all. Yeah.
I'll tell you something, Tracy. And a lot of people don't know this, right? But when Brexit happened, and I haven't heard anybody talking about this at all. I think I'm the only one that's talked about this, to be honest. When Brexit happened, remember shortly after the pound collapsed against various other currencies, it lost about 20p in the pound or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But what happened was the Bank of England did £250 billion of quantitative easing at that point. Now, £250 billion pumped into the economy, what does that do? It debases the currency, it devalues it, It basically kills its purchasing power against relative to other currencies. So a lot of people, as far as I'm aware, people don't seem to be aware of this, that actually. And another thing as well, Tracy, is when Brexit happened, the referendum, the polls that were carried out beforehand were showing clearly about 80% on the side of Leave, about 15% for Remain, and about 5% were undecided. And when we got the result, it came back 52-48 to Leave. What I think they've done is they tried to rig the vote massively by the tune of about 40%, like they did with the Lisbon Treaty, and it still wasn't enough. to keep us remaining in the EU. So I think they underestimated the will of the people massively. There's a hell of a lot more leavers out there than remainers, in truth. But we're left to believe that it was a case of 52-48. And I don't believe that for a minute. All the polls showed completely different from that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it was a lot more as well. I totally agree with that. I totally believe that. And when you look at these outside Parliament, you know, sometimes you might get 30, you know, which isn't a lot, where they make it. I'll give you an example, actually, because I was actually out on the streets when this happened. What they did was this. So Sadiq Khan, who we all know was not a mayor in my name, but the mayor of London, held a Remainers demo. Now, for a start, he should be impartial, but obviously not, but then they're all corrupt and they're all deceptive. So here he is holding his Remainers demo. Now, I was down the side road by the MOD, the Ministry of Defence that day, and we was down there for a PTS demo with regards to the amount of veterans that are committing suicide over PTSD, because they're not getting the help they should get from the establishment, which is horrific. So I was at this demonstration down the side road. So I see and the Remainers demonstration was on Whitehall, and basically that road interlinks into Whitehall. So I had a clear view of it all. And not only did I have a clear view of that, I had a clear view of everyone walking down our side road where we're doing our demonstration and speaking there at that demonstration, of everything what was going on. Now, what was going on is this, and how these people who were doing this never saw that. I'll never understand it in my life. So what they were doing, they was getting all the Remainers to walk down Whitehall, then go back around. So I saw at least the same people 3 times come down the side road and walk down Whitehall. So what they was doing, they was getting them to walk in a circle, basically, so that when they filmed it, it looked like the end of it was never ending. So it looked like, so the mainstream media could report that there was over 700,000.
That's crafty, isn't it? I didn't know that.
Yeah. This is what I'm saying. Once you're out on the streets, and I'm out there a hell of a lot uploading, you truly, not just what I've been put into, the horrific, torturous, tragic event that I've put in with and going through with the establishment, everything else you see when you go out onto the streets. I'll give you another thing that the mainstream media did. This is how much they are the enemy of the people. I was at a demonstration up in Sunderland, and women and children were on the streets. Children holding banners and placards saying no more rapes. No more rapes, because there was don't know how many rapes there was down one road. I can't remember now, but there was quite a few. And the police did nothing, no arrests, which is all quite common now. So they was out on the streets. I was up there and lucky enough to speak. Well, anyway, at the front of this demonstration, the women and children.
I think I remember that, Tracy. Was it that Justice for Chelsea?
No, it wasn't that one. Yeah, it wasn't that one. And I know, Billy Charlton did a lot of those demonstrations, and he's inside now, another truth teller. So I was at this demonstration, and the women and children at the front had this massive banner, and it was red and white. And I can tell you, because I was there, that on the front of that it said, Justice for Women and Children of Sunderland.
Yeah.
2 days later, on LBC, they was portraying it, someone ringing in saying it said, immigrants not welcome. And this is what they do. This is what they've done to the DFLA, which I said earlier is the Democratic Football Lads Alliance. I've been to their demonstrations, and they're against all forms of extremism, all forms of racism, yet the papers will report them as far-right racists. I've stood on there, and I wouldn't stand with a far-right racist. I wouldn't go to a racist demonstration, and I've never been to one, but the mainstream media will always report them as that, because they don't want people to know the truth. And that's what's so sick and sad about this country.
Well, Tracy, I had my sort of awakening about 10 years ago, as I said earlier, and after that, I stopped using television altogether. Never used it since, because I could see what was going on. Now, the BBC are supposed to be impartial and unbiased, and yet they've got a definite pro-EU stance on things, and they have done for years. They've over-reported the benefits of the European Union and haven't weighed it equally against the idea of leaving the EU or anything like that, because everything anti-EU with the BBC is filtered through the Siemens transmission network. So they couldn't actually at the time put out anything that was anti-EU. That's how corrupt it is. So, it tells you everything you need to know, basically.
It's horrifying. The whole system, everything we're in, the more you listen to people, like listening to you or going on the streets and listening to everyone else, the more stories you hear, and you come back and you think, when you think you've heard another story, you hear another one, and then you've got into that and everything else. But as far as Brexit's concerned, I don't believe they're going to deliver it. If there is a deal, then that still ties us to it. Is it going to be Brexit in name only?
Yeah.
Or we should have no deal. We didn't vote to leave for a deal.
Exactly. We voted to leave, plain and simple. End of. That's what it should be. I agree, Tracy, absolutely. But like you say, I think what they'll do is try and pull the wool over the people's eyes and say, well, we've got a deal at the last moment with the European Union, and it's going to be great for us. It's going to be wonderful, but it's going to be in name only, and it's going to keep us in some form of customs union, I believe. And they might not keep us in the single market, but I think they'll definitely keep us in some sort of customs union from what I can see, or they're going to attempt to, and they'll try and do it by pulling the wool over the eyes of the people. That's what I think.
We're just 2 hours into this show. I just wanted to say, we've all witnessed the propaganda to try and halt Brexit, if not stop it. Just imagine if we ever decided to have a referendum on establishment. So that'd be rather interesting, because I'd love to know.
In a way, PJ, we have had a referendum on the establishment, because if you find out, and this is going to be shocking to you, when I found out this, I couldn't believe it. Apparently, the vast majority of people in this country aren't even on the electoral register, mate. So, as far as I'm concerned, they haven't even got a bloody mandate to be in government.
Yeah, well, I'm one of them that's not on it, and I think you are as well.
Yeah, that's right. As soon as I get my electoral thing in the post, I just write on it, no contract, return to sender, and straight back in the bloody post, mate,
Yeah, well, Tracy's spot on. I mean, I wanted to just basically, Tracy, is to get the viewers to understand how you've come from, the 28th of January 2018, was it?
26.
26, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
From that day to this day, and from you getting involved with the yellow vests, because it's a lot bigger than just that Jaynesh guy, yeah? For you now,
yeah.
So, and you not only are you wanting to bring some justice and help change the law in respect to the death by dangerous driving, you're also wanting to really raise awareness and promote something which is much bigger, which is what we've been discussing, in the hope that it can offer some sort of protection to other people's children. And since we've been doing this broadcast, the Facebook page has been bombarded. So you are definitely loved, admired, treasured, and everything out there. And I will also say there is the odd troll, which is despicable, really, because of the comment that they've made is just absolutely. And I'm not even going to repeat it, Tracy, because I'm sure you don't need me to.
Trust me, I get it all the time. I've seen many, and lucky enough for me, I was brought up the British way, to stand up for our rights when an injustice has been done, when a wrong's been done. I was brought up with good morals. I've had trolls since speaking out. They've said some horrific things. They've made up videos about me and everything else. But you know what? I'm tougher than that. I was brought up on sticks and stones. and I can only imagine what's been written because I've had it many times, and they do that because the government also pay people to do this.
Well, that's most definitely where it is, Tracy, because anybody who's listened to you for even just a couple of minutes on any of your live streams, it doesn't really take too long, because you've got that character to you that just absorbs people's attention. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
And
yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that.
And well, we're going to get to the bottom of where the troll. I mean, they're definitely paid. All it takes is just to look into that, to what you're saying, and at the very least, it just warrants questioning. At the very least, and if people aren't capable or prepared to do that, then that's just a dead giveaway to me. It tells me everything about him. I don't need to know anymore. So that individual who did that comment that I'm not going to repeat really does need to start looking inside their own mind.
And you know what else it proves? It proves we're winning.
Yeah, it does.
It proves we're winning, and it proves they're running scared. And they need to, because I was brought up the right way. I was brought up with a backbone. I was brought up in a very male environment, with loads of good morals and to care about people. These people that write whatever comment it is, they don't care about people. They're all about demeaning those people, trying to take away their credibility, which is what they try and do with me. But I'm much stronger than them. I said this before, the establishment, they play psychological games, and that's why they write stuff like that, because they want it to affect you. They want it to upset you. They want you to stop. And by all means, they do everything they can. And it doesn't work with me.
That's part of their namesake, isn't it, Tracy? That's why they're called government. Control the mind.
Absolutely. People mean something to me. My son meant the world to me. And I saw the treatment that our children and how they were treated. And, as you mentioned earlier about, the speech, or what I told everyone when I was outside Scotland Yard about, what the establishment did, and how I have, I don't know how to put it because it sounds horrific, but the only way I can put it is bits and pieces of my son. I have in 3 places in my home now, in the freezer and in a drawer next to me. And that's what the establishment done, because we thought that we gave a funeral to the whole of our children, and to find out we didn't is horrific. And we only found that out because someone made an error when a phone call was made to the mortuary. And, I'm going to collect what we thought would be one thing. We found out it was between 14 and 16. Some of the parents have got... I can't say it because it's horrific, and it's not fair on the listeners.
Tracy, can I ask you, when you were stood at the police station, you did tell me the name of the station, I forgot, is it? But
the Alberton one?
That's the one. Yard. No, the other one. Was you aware of that at that time?
No.
Didn't think you was. Well, that's what I'm saying. When I watched that, and I'm thinking to myself, how come nobody's coming out? Nobody. Not even one of them doctors in there that they've got. Nobody's coming out. And then when I watched that video and you explained what you've just said, it all clicked into place for me. And really, that were it. That's horrible too.
I mean, they bloody well would come out and say something about it if something like that had happened to them. I'm sure of that. But it shows how the lack of empathy of some people. It's amazing to me. I mean, I haven't had anything like that sort of thing happen to me. But even then, I couldn't sit back and say nothing when I can see injustice going on all around me. I have to stand up and say something. It's just the way I've been built, the way I'm built, And Tracy, I've got to say, you the courage that you've shown, and what you've had to go through and everything. You're an amazing lady. In my opinion, you're absolutely amazing, and you're an inspiration to people that have had to go through these sort of things as well. So, keep up the good work, Trace. If I was there, I'd give you a big hug now.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. We can't, going on the streets, You know, I'm a Leaver anyway, so I can talk about Brexit in the way I do, as well as talking about justice for our boys. You know, and when you go out on the streets and you find out about the false adoptions and you meet these families, you know, on Christmas Day, I was outside Whitehall gates. Couldn't be at home. I didn't want to see decorations. I didn't, you know. So I went up to London. I stood at those gates and I told them where I should be. You know, I should have been at home with my children, with my son, and they should have told us what was going on in our streets. And we would have had choices that night of, you know, making sure our children got all the way there and, you know, everything else that comes with it. But we wasn't told, so we had no choice. And our sons didn't stand a chance. And, you know, coming out and knowing how they dealt with us, I remember standing in court and thinking, oh my God, they've treated us like that. What have they done to other families? So then sorry, I've jumped, but on Christmas Day, I went from Whitehall and I went up to the appeal court. I jumped to the cab and went up there and sat with the man, Mark, who was on hunger strike for the forced adoptions. I looked at all the pictures on the tents of all these, you know, lovely little children who have been snatched from loving arms. And, you know, a husband and wife came up there whose children had been taken, and I listened to their story. And that affects me, you know, and I care about that. Why anyone in the establishment don't, and referencing to something you said earlier, Jeff, about these people, they move even higher up, but that's what it's all about, isn't it? You commit this crime towards the people, and we'll move you up into a better position and give you more money for that. Well, no one could buy me to do that. No one could pay me £80 a day to stand outside Parliament and act as a Remainer, because that's selling your country out, it's selling the children out. You know, and how do these people not see that?
Yeah.
It's funny what you say about that, Tracy. I've seen a picture the other day, and I had to comment on it because it was about the homeless in England, and which is a national disgrace as far as I'm concerned, the way they treat the homeless in this country. Apparently, something about a £25,000 fine for sleeping rough on the streets or something. And I put, underneath I put, and for outside Parliament, that's it. For sleeping rough outside Parliament, they get a £25,000 fine. And I said, well, the parliamentarians are bloody falling asleep and get paid £300 a day for it inside bloody Parliament. You know, it's incredible. You can't make this shit up, can you?
No.
Tracy, I was just reading the comments. Jackie is asking, she says she says, hi Tracy love, I'm coming to London on the 29th. What time and where are you meeting, please?
Oh, bless her. You know what, I'll be in a few places because there's some things going on that day. Some things I can't mention, but if Jackie's coming up and wants to, you know, come where the yellow vest will be, because this is 11 o'clock at night. It's going to be a long day. So for Jackie, she's probably better off getting up there maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. It depends how long she actually wants to spend up there, whether she wants to be there up until 11 p.m. We will be there up until 11 p.m., that's for sure. You know, but outside Parliament is where most of us will be. Probably from about 1 p.m.
Okay.
If that helps, Jackie. From 1 p.m. outside Parliament, that is where a lot of the yellow vests will be. And I think that day there will be a lot of different groups, you know, from all over Facebook and that will be going up that day. But we will be up there from at least 1 p.m.
Right, no worries. Rita said SS. That's the only comment there from Rita. I'm trying to find the comments from the post that we've shared and that has been shared since, because I failed to embed the chat on the site underneath the video, so while people are watching this, they're not able to comment. So I'm having to, pick through these shares to pull out some of the comments. But that was one or two there that I thought I'd mention. If I come across some more, I'll shout them out. So I don't know how long you're wanting to carry on for, Tracy, or if there's anything else that you'd like to speak about in regards to...
I was just going to message you actually and say I've got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I don't know if you quickly wanted to ask Jeff about that diplomatic immunity or discuss it a little bit.
Yes, please, because I didn't know. I thought only diplomats could sort of ask for something like that.
I'm not absolutely certain. Yeah, you could be right on that. I'm not absolutely certain about it myself. I know that what was it? If you got diplomatic immunity, or somehow if they're not born in this country, sometimes they're extradited to serve a sentence in another country and things like that. That's the point I was going to make. So I know that does happen in some cases where they're extradited and they serve a sentence in another country or whatever because he's the person in question is from another country and he was born in another country. So I don't absolutely. Yeah, you could be right about that. I'm not absolutely certain, so don't quote me on that. But I just wonder because they're from another country whether they've got some sort of type of immunity or whatever. I'm not sure. You'd have to find out about that, Tracy, to be honest.
Yeah, well, do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me. That's the thing, even though I'm assuming it was only diplomats that had that, it wouldn't surprise me. So I will look, will definitely look into that.
Yeah, well, just the fact that they're trying to hide things and not disclose information, which you really should, you in most cases that I've come across information like where they were from, it is usually, mentioned. So it is a bit. I don't know whether there's any conflict or interest with any of that, but there's something definitely suspicious with not revealing the full identity.
100%, 100%. Just so I can finish it, I just want to say, thank you for having me on tonight, and let me share, some of my story. More will come out. We're looking into doing private prosecutions. It's the only way to do it. And that's why they do what they can do to us, because the only way to prove anything is a private prosecution, which actually costs thousands of pounds. And that's why they can do what they want to the working class, because they think you can't fight back. So, we're looking into doing private prosecutions. We've already started the ball rolling. We've got an official complaint in against the police, so that we can try and prove to people out there what the police did. Because once you start that route, you're showing people, well, look, this is what the police did do. So then that will open up a can of worms for everything else. So we've got a lot going on that we're doing. I'm also, as you know, out there on the streets with the people. The Yellow Vests UK are a people's movement, and everyone comes, they're coming there for their own reasons, whether it's Brexit or forced adoption, all under one banner of injustices. And we're doing that. I'll just quickly say, because I did reference earlier, that is with regards to taking that initiative from the Yellow Vests in France, who are standing up for the same thing and the same things, but they're suffering from police brutality badly in France, and the mainstream media are not showing any of it. I get a lot of French videos sent to me on fighting for justice. And they put a tank out on the street the other day, and they wasn't just firing at the demonstrators in the Yellow Vest, they was firing at just people walking past. Yeah. So we're heading for dark days, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've been covering that, Tracy, as much as we could in depth. There was something else I was going to say. Oh yeah, and your Yellow Vest page on Facebook, not to be confused with other Yellow Vest pages out there. I just wanted to mention that, Tracy, because I'm sure you're aware of other similar representing Yellow Vest UK pages on Facebook.
Oh, without a doubt, I'm glad you actually said that, because when we started, there was 34 people that went out on the streets in Yellow Vest. I was one of those 34. And then what happened? All of a sudden, you started seeing Yellow Vest UK. We're actually Yellow Vest United Kingdom on Facebook. We did used to have another group of Yellow Vest, but Facebook took that down. And then what we noticed was loads of people were making up Yellow Vest pages. Now, some of those are legit, and they are, but there's some that isn't. And you'll find in the ones that isn't, some of them are asking for money in there. The Yellow Vests don't ask, you don't need no money. There's no leaders. We all stand as one. It's people coming out, either using their feet or their voice. And victims are coming out on the streets, speaking through megaphones, telling their story. It's an amazing thing to see. giving everyone a voice. And that's what it should be about, and standing up for the children, because we have to.
Most definitely. Most definitely. That's what society needs to start doing. It needs to start getting a backbone, working together and organising. Tracy, it's been a pleasure listening to you. Unfortunately, the things you've had to share with us has not been pleasurable. I do thank you for spending over 2 hours with us. Is he?
I just say something a minute, PJ.
I was just going to say, is there anything quickly that anybody else wants to say before?
Well, if Tracy's going down the route of private prosecutions, I know it's a costly affair. Is there any way you could set up a GoFundMe campaign
cheers, Jeff.
to get the funds?
Tracy,
to get the funds,
Jeff, I'll take this one. I was just going to say, Tracy, because I know you need to go. Can you spend 2 minutes sending me some links after the show, and I'll attach them to the description of this video for any petitions or websites or anything that you want to share, Tracy. Just make sure you send me them after the show, and I'll happily put them on.
Yeah, just to say, the GoFundMe, I did set up one. I struggle with it, to be honest, and that's purely based on the fact that I was brought up a certain way. You make your own money and everything else. So what I did, I made one up, and then I very rarely shared it because I couldn't. So what we did instead, we went out onto the streets. We went to all different football games arranged with the fans, and they were fantastic because they were walking together. I've got to say, I know football fans do get bad press at times, but the football fans have been amazing at different clubs, from Liverpool to Aston Villa to Tottenham to Arsenal to Millwall, who have been absolutely phenomenal. They've been singing the boys' song at football games. It's been heard on TV many times from different clubs. We've gone to all these clubs and stood outside, with buckets, and people have donated. So we've been doing it that way, going. It's very difficult to see your son's face on a bucket and shake that, but it's a case of having no choice. So that's what we've actually been doing, because I struggled to share it. So I just went out with these lads myself and done it that way,
Yeah,
so that's what I've been doing anyway.
That's good to hear, Tracy, because we always do. Well, I've always said, they do get a lot of stick, people who go watch football matches, and just imagine if every single one of them were to turn out a yellow vest. That would be beautiful. So it's lovely to hear. It's lovely to hear that they're singing the songs and things like that. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah,
really is. I'll never forget one day watching West Ham fans, and when the DFLA, who I mentioned earlier, have a demonstration. You're talking about football fans from every club coming together as one. And the day I saw, it was West Ham actually that day that I saw come up the road singing the boys' song. I can't tell you how that made me feel. These lads are phenomenal in my eyes. So I'll end it there, and I'll say thank you so much for having me on. Thank you to the listeners who are listening and anyone who's commented. It's been an honour.
Tracy, thank you. Bless your heart. Take care, because a lot of people do post and comment asking you to be careful and take care and everything.
Yeah.
That is a lot of what I see, so it is important that I do repeat it for them as well. So do take care when you go out.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
No worries, thank you.
See you out on the streets. Bye-bye.
Keep up the British Bulldog spirit, Tracy. You're doing us proud. And, good luck with the private prosecutions and all that as well, because I think, you deserve to get some decent justice at last. You know what I mean?
The children do, our sons do, the children do. So thank you very much again. Bye, everyone.
Cheers, Tracy.